And we're back, and it's COMP305 in the winter 2016 semester, and it's week 2, lesson 2, part 3. And first parts, we kind of talked about a little bit of Blender. We talked a little bit of Blender. That's really weird. And of course, we're going to have to switch out of this and switch back. That's bizarre. But it's still recording, which is kind of cool. Hopefully it won't kill my screen. And let's see what happens when I switch out. Yay. Okay. So not sure how this is going to affect the recording, but we'll see what happens, right? So hopefully if one of you can check online on the website there, that'd be great. And again, for the purposes of the website, if you want to check the YouTube, it's youtube.com and it's /Celiopoulos, my first initial last name. And you'll see that there should be a live session, theoretically. Let's take a look. It should be a live session that you see like this. That's what it'll come up like, right? So if you actually click on this thing, hopefully you'll be able to see, what we're looking at in fairly, it's going to look fairly good. If it doesn't look fairly good, that's bad. Now, hopefully you guys should not be seeing me, and if you are, this is a bad thing because you shouldn't be seeing me at all. Let's try this again. See, this is kind of the weird stuff that goes on, right? So hopefully that'll be better. Is that better? Hopefully you'll be able to see. So you won't see me because seeing me is like useless. There's no things. Just wait. It's gonna update. It's about a second behind, right? So there we go. And then we should be able to see the screen there. Thank you for that. That's why I know when I saw you do that, I swapped right back to this because that would be really bad. Okay, so we're actually recording my screen here. That was weird that happened. So what we're talking about is assignment number 1. So if you would look at eCentennial on, if you look at eCentennial on Dropbox, assignment number 1 is the 2D shooter, and I'm going to talk about the details of this 2D shooter right now. So it's due the same time as the people who have me for COMP392 and 397. It's all the same time, right? It's all happening at the same time, right? So it's not a happy circumstance that everything else is at the same time, but it's just the way things flow. You're going to get, if you have 7 courses, you're probably going to get 7 assignments all due around the same time frame, right? Which is a bad thing. That's why I would space it out if I were you. And I've always made it on the Friday, even though we meet on a Wednesday, I make it on the Friday to give you a couple of days leeway. I recommend hand it in earlier. I mean, if you're done, don't wait till the Friday to do it, right? Because you probably have other assignments from me and other people doing the same day. And that would be a big crunch. I always recommend do the one that's easier first for the higher marks, right? I always look at it like low-hanging fruit from the tree, right? So the low-hanging fruit, grab that fruit first. Don't go and grab the hard one, because then the one down here you missed, right? And it's easier, right? Get that one done, and then do the next one. So so do the assignments that are easier to you first. So that's all. That's the highest I recommend. Then, once those are out of the way, get to work on the other ones. Like today, one of our students in the other class finished his assignment number 1 right away because he wanted to get it done. So because he has all the other things to do, right? And that's what he was telling me. Now, if you find this difficult, obviously you're going to try and get the easier ones done first. Let's talk about the details. So again, we're going to be using Space Shooter tutorial, which is up on Unity 3D Learn Tutorials Project Space Shooter tutorial. It is slightly older, but it's good from a learning perspective. And if I was to look at that, going down to Learn, and I keep indicating this, we're going to use this as our Bible, but it's really true. If I look at tutorials, you'll notice that there's 2. This is a good one to learn basics, this rollerball tutorial. There's only 9 parts to it if you were going to start with this one. It's good because it teaches you things like how to create colliders, different kinds of colliders and what they are. This one's a little bit more intense. And it starts off with a couple things. One thing it doesn't do, the basic tutorial, the basic one, up to here, without extending it, it doesn't teach you how to make bullets and all that kind of stuff. If you actually go to the next one, it teaches you bullets and explosions, but it doesn't talk about enemies, right? So if you want to talk about enemies shooting back at you and all that kind of stuff, you keep going until you hit the extended piece, this extending space shooter one, right? Like different enemies that shoot back at you, more hazards, all that kind of stuff is down there, right? But really what you want to hit is at least at the basics, setting up your camera, creating your shots, creating your prefabs, all those kind of things, setting up scoring and all that stuff. There's a bunch of things we're going to be doing here that we're going to cover, and this covers a lot of it. Now, I'll be honest with you, this takes a long time. This doesn't take, it doesn't take 5 minutes. How long did you spend on it so far, your tutorial? Like you started, right? Right. So, I mean, it's a long time, right? So, and how much did you spend on your, did you finish this one? Rollerball's easy, but start this one. This one takes a while. This one, because there's a lot of piece parts. And you know what I found when I was doing it the first time is you have to stop it and then try it, fix it, go back. And then that takes a long time. It slows you down before you finish, right? So I highly recommend you look at this before you do it. It'll give you some ideas of what to do. And also, I'm going to be doing my own tutorial here for the one we're going to be doing specifically to the way you can do yours as well, right? So that's the one that I recommend. Now, again, please, like I said last video when we got together, please don't give me this one back or anything that I've given you. Make your own, right? So if I create a mail pilot tutorial, which is the next one, and I'll talk about mail pilot a little bit. There's a little bit of history there. You know, I want you to take it and run with it. Make it your own. Don't give me back the same stuff. That would be very bad. Okay, and you would get 0. So let's talk about this one, which is this document. So again, you're using your tutorial. You're going to create your own 2D arcade game, and the game must have enemies for the player to avoid and/or destroy. And the reason why I said avoid is, it's not a requirement that you make your player shoot at this time, like fire a weapon. It's too much, right? So it's okay for you to avoid the bullets, and that's what we're going to do. Our first tutorial we're going to make together is going to be avoiding being hit, okay? A scoring system must also be included. So how do you set up a scoring system? We're going to be talking about that over the next, like today, and as well as next week. We're going to be talking about the build to try and get you guys ready. I'm going to give you as much of it as possible, but don't wait for me. Move on, right? And again, remember, I have all these other videos online that you can always access to get ahead. So don't wait for me to talk about it just in class. Try it out and bring it in and say, hey, I tried this and it didn't work. Can you help me out? That's a better way of doing it than, you know what, I don't know what to do, and I haven't watched your videos, and I haven't attended class, and I don't know how I'm going to finish my assignment number 1. That's bad, right? So we're going to make this thing. So the first thing is you're going to create a gameplay screen where the main game occurs. That's your scene. That could be your main scene, if you will. And we talked about creating a main scene before. The background will scroll in one direction. And we'll talk about what scrolling is. Some of you may not know because you're not game people, or you know, but you don't know how it works, right? We'll talk about that. You're going to control an avatar, some kind of vehicle or character. It doesn't have to be the same a spaceship. Even though the game is called, you know, the tutorial space shooter, you can make it whatever you want, right? Some kind of vehicle that you know, with a scrolling background. So it's a scroller, right? Player control of an avatar, and use the standard keys WASD from player movement. That's what we want you to do. So you're going to use WASD and/or your arrow keys to make it all go. That's what the basic movement's all about. With the input manager that we talked about last week, or last day, I mean. Computer control of a simple AI of enemies. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm talking randomization here, okay? We're not talking like AIs and the enemy knows where you are, all right? It's not like about that at all. It's random, enemies that come at you. One thing to note in the past is that I'm going to show you a game where you have clouds and I have a plane, and the plane avoids the clouds, right? Like we did in Mail Pilot. Please don't make the clouds into cars, right? Because that's what happens, right? Someone takes my code and they say, well, it's not a cloud anymore. It's a car, and it's not an ocean. It's a road, and the cars are going to come at me. But in my game, my clouds overlap because clouds overlapping is okay. Cars overlapping makes no sense, right? So you see, the game has to make sense. If you're going to make a car game, it has to make it so that the cars can't overlap, right? Those kind of things. So again, I give you code, ideas of how to make it, and then you take it from there and you solve some of the problems you're going to have, okay? The enemy should be abundant enough to challenge the player, but not be impossible to beat. If it's too hard, the game is too hard, it's no good, all right? It can't be an impossible game. Yeah, Tom, I made this crazy game. No one can finish it. I can't even play it. It's no fun. If it's not fun for you to play it, it's not fun for me. I got to look at each one of your games one by one. I got to play them each at least 5 to 10 minutes to check it out. You got to think about it. If there's 40 students in this class at 5 to 10 minutes each person's project, that's a lot of marking and a lot of time for each of you, right? Please don't bore the hell out of me, all right? Make it so that it's your own. Make it so it's interesting. But that takes a little bit of thinking and planning, and we're going to get to that in a bit. All right. Random placement of items to collect and or obstacles to pass through or over. That means that something else to generate points other than killing your opponents or going around the the clouds or whatever you're going to be doing. It's some kind of point generation. It's not pickup would be an example of that. I want to pick up a coin or something to give me some points. And then a scoring system. So I have two things. I can get points from avoiding or picking up some kind of pickup, killing the enemies, whatever, making it to a certain place, like a milestone or something like that, a stopping place, whatever. There's different ways of getting points, right? And you come up with a scoring system. Also, the player, that's point F, has to have a life counter, some kind of health status for the avatar. So if he gets hit, he gets hurt, right? Either he loses a life or whatever. Please don't give the player one life. That's very bad too. So you play like Flappy Bird, up, and all of a sudden, you're dead, right? That's like, it's really bad. Flappy Bird is like a really hard, so it's a good example of both things I don't want. It's a really hard game and you only have one life. You can't go on, right? So it's like, why would you play that game? It was a fanatic craze for a while, right? But, you know, and then sometimes people would be challenged. I can make it through like 5 things, right? 5 of those and I'm good, right? I don't know. Some people go, how far did you go with Flappy Bird? Huh? Don't tell me you got like 100 or something like that. 700? That's crazy, right? Flappy Bird is nuts, right? Right, so it's a bad game. Please don't make Flappy Bird. Right, that's all I'm saying. Add sound effects for collisions with the enemies and collecting points. So sound effects, you need sound effects, right? Notice that there's something missing here. I don't have any animations. There's no animations required for this first game. People will go out of their way to give me animations for this first game, right? I like it, but it's a lot of work for 10%, right? It's only 10% this thing. Don't go nuts, man. Make it a decent game. Make it work. Learn what you need to learn for this 2D piece. Move on, right? And not that I don't want you to get all your bonus points and all that kind of stuff, because there's bonus points for everything else. But you know, you also have to really think about how much time you're going to spend on this project. This project is not a 50-hour project, guys and girls, right? It's not. And we'll talk about how long you think it might take. Internal documentation is very similar to anything else you've seen from me, because you're still going to internally document your C# code. And that's kind of really important. There's also an external document requirement on this one, which is a little different, right? The external document has a bunch of little things here, and it actually gives you some extra marks because we need to learn how to plan our games. Now, up on eCentennial, I also have an example of an external document that's bundled with your Dropbox. So if you look up there, I'll show you what it looks like. And it's one that I kind of use across my projects for gaming, right? Any game that we make, we should have some kind of external document. It looks like this. This is the external document that you're going to see, right? Okay, here's what I get with this external document. I get this back, and it says type company name here. That's your company name. That's not me. Don't leave it in brackets like this. Change it, right? Make it so that it's your own, right? I want to see a logo for your document, right? This is your game. You're going to make a game. So let's make pretend. Let's make believe here, ladies and gentlemen. Make your own logo up. And if you're not an artist, and you're like, hey Tom, I'm not an artist, so you're expecting to make a logo. It could be your name, right? Your name, and then some kind of fancy way it's a graphic that you make out of your name with a circle around it. There's your logo. You're done, right? I mean, it's something to differentiate you compared to everybody else, right? If you're really someone who's part of the gaming piece, like if you're in the gaming program, and I know there's a couple of you that are now, finally, in 305, this version, I know there's a couple of you. You should make it so that it's something that you're going to use consistently from one class to the next. So don't remake it. Once you make your logo, it's done, right? And you use that for each of your assignments. Each of your assignments is going to require your own logo. Even your final one, when you kind of come together with a partner, because at the end, you're going to partner with somebody on your final project, right? You're going to use both logos. You know, like this is like company A and company B, and we're working together in partnership to produce the game, right? Make it fun is what I'm saying. So make your company logo. By the way, I'm paying you for it, right? So again, company logo, half a mark. Table of contents, half a mark. Version history. And some people ask, well, I go on GitHub. I'm going to put everything on GitHub anyway. What do I need a version history? Just give me your commits. Give me a snapshot of your commits and put it inside that document. I'm good. That's what version history is for me. A snapshot of your commits. A detailed game description. Talk to me about what your game is about, right? Like a few lines about what it's about, right? Some controls. How do you control your game? Is it still WASD? Cool. All right, fine. Do you also include arrow keys? Let me know, right? Do you also allow mouse movement? You might want to do that for whatever reason. Okay, let me know. But you have to kind of specify how your controls work. Notice how if I go back to that document that I just showed you, the external document, which is, you have this. It's on eCentennial, right? It says the document title. Please change this. Don't call it Space Shooter. Call it the game you're going to make, right? You know, something else. I don't know, like Tank. You know, whatever kind of game you're going to make. Tank Killer, right? Star Wars Hater, whatever, something, right? It's the game you're going to make. And you can also make a game that's already made. So let's say somebody made a game like you know, you want to make a game that's similar to Missile Command or something like that, right? And that's your side scroller. So you have a bit of Missile Command, and there's a bit of some other games that you know out there that you've seen before. It's okay. You don't have to make it an original game. It's just got to be your own code, and it's got to be your own assets. Okay, that's what it's got to be. Can't be somebody else's code or somebody else's assets. Okay, this has got to be your own stuff. All right. Obviously, you're going to put your version in here. You're going to change notice how long I've had this document in place since 2012, right? I've been using it since 2011, actually. Change this copyright to something else. And then this is your name. Where it says type the author's name here, this is your name. Don't leave that author's name in here, right? May 16, you're going to change this to the name of, or the date today. Table of contents and stuff goes here, like we said in the thing. And there's your version history. Just copy and paste here. Get rid of these comments. Anything in square brackets, I want you to get rid of. Don't leave them there, please. That's a pain in the, you know what, right? Because I look at it and I'm like, this person doesn't care. In fact, this template that I'm giving you, you can change it. You can make the background black for all I care. As long as it's your document, this is your game design document. You're going to use this over and over again, right? So make it your own. Make it look different, right? Because there's marks associated with it. There's like 8 marks out of 41, right? That's almost one quarter, if you think about it, of your marks is this document. So please don't ignore it. People have handed in their final project without this document, they lose 8 marks automatically, right? I don't give them extra marks if they don't hand it in. I start you off at 100%. You don't deliver something, you lose marks. That's what it is, right? It's really simple to mark my stuff because each line tells you where the marks are. So mark yourself. Take it out, look at the document and go, it didn't include an external document, 8 marks gone. That's crazy. There's no way you can get a good mark that way. Okay, so notice that there's some sections that you don't need. Like for example, did I ask for gameplay mechanics here? No, but on my external document, there's a section that says gameplay mechanics. What do you do with this section? Take it out, right? This is a template. If you don't have a camera, if your camera, for example, in this case, we do have a camera, and the camera is going to be an orthographic camera, not a perspective camera. So you put it in there, orthographic camera, producing 2D effect or something like that, right? Controls, saving and loading. There's no saving and loading requirement. Take it out. Please don't give me this that says this, or don't put none. Just say, there's no saving and loading. Take it out, okay? You don't need it. And that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna score you when I look at this section 3. I'm gonna score you on all the stuff that I have in here, right? So things like, you know, what do your enemies look like? One of the things that people get messed up on is number F and G, right? F says, give me an interface sketch, and then G says, give me screenshots, right? They're not the same thing, right? I'm not asking you for the same thing. An interface sketch is like you drawing out what your game is going to look like, right? And I'm not talking about drawing out like a professional artist. I'm talking about going into Paint and taking squares and maybe a circle and saying, here's my player, and here's a square for the cloud, and then the cloud is coming this way or something else, and this is my player, and I have to avoid with arrows. I have to avoid the cloud. Here's the cloud. Here's my life. Here's my here's my points, and lay out your screen by drawing it out. And there's I'm going to show you some examples of how to get that, how to finish your external document here. Yes. Yes, I was going to say that too. You can also take a picture. So draw it on a piece of paper and go click, click. Take a picture of your phone and include it into the document. Now you want to do as many of the scenes as possible. If I ask you for instructions, click, click. Take a picture of what the instructions would look like. Draw them out, like and what it's going to look like. Even if you use cue cards, some people use cue cards for creating the interface, right? And actually, that's the old way we used to do it, right? Especially if you do things with mobile. Right? I have mobile. If I get 3.5 by 5 cards, right, like this, cue card, and I turn it on the side, it's almost a mobile phone, yeah? It's almost the same thing. If I'm making it a game for mobile, I'm going to use a cue card because it's almost the exact same form factor, right? Now, there's some other programs I'm going to show you that are going to help you, right? That are actual digital programs you can use that are really fast, maybe even faster than drawing it by hand, right? And more accurate. I'm just saying, unless you're an artist. So we'll talk about that interface. So interface sketch is totally different. It's with one mark, but it's totally different than a screenshot. A screenshot is when you actually have the working game, and then you take a screenshot of what it's going to look like. So this is what I planned. That's the sketch. And here's my actual. This is what I ended up making after I got it done. So you can't do part G until you're done your game, right? So part of it is planning ahead of time, and part of it is documenting what you've done, this document, all right? That's what the game design document's all about. Same thing with characters and vehicles. Make a screenshot, at least. That's where you take a screenshot of your vehicle. Say, this is the vehicle, this is what it does. Here's my enemy, this is what it does. Here's my score. Here's how I score. Talk to me about how you score a little bit. This document can take an hour. I'll be honest with you. This is not something that's going to be something you can do in 10 minutes. I don't know, unless you're Einstein, right? I couldn't do it in 10 minutes, even if I tried, right? It's going to take time just to draw stuff out and take screenshots and organize my document in order and remove sections I don't need. It's going to take me some time. Definitely an hour on this one. So there's your hour, 1 hour on your document, for sure, 100%. Art and multimedia index and your sound index is just some links to where you got your stuff. And also, I say you can't use your own, other people's code. If you're going to use code that I give you, if I've given you code, or if I've got it up on GitHub, right, and I've told you on GitHub you can use this code, not all code you can use on GitHub, because there's some code on there that you have to ask to use, right? It's okay. If you're unsure if you can use the code because you think it might be cheating, like consider cheating, if I'm going to look at it like, wait, ask me. That's the best. Or let's say you have a friend of yours even, a friend of yours made something really cool, and you want to do the same thing, but he already made really cool code, and you don't want to do it again. Ask me. Chances are I'm going to say no for the first assignment. But you never know, right? If you copy your friend's code and put it into your assignment, both of you are going to get 0. That's terrible. So please don't do that. Ask ahead of time. Ask me, can I use the code? And if I can't, if you can, great. You're going to put the person who wrote the code into your document, and away you go. For some things, especially if you download something from the asset store, because for Unity you can download a lot of assets and code and different functionality from the asset store, right? That's okay. If you grab something from the asset store and you use it to make your game, to make it go for this assignment, I'm okay with that. Just letting you know, right? So if it's from the asset store, just note it in your external document. Say, this is from the asset store, right? Please don't do this with code. Don't download code from the asset store and use that. That I don't want you to do, because you can do that too. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to use code from the asset store. Okay, not for this one. And we'll talk about it. There are going to be some I'm going to say yes, even for code from the asset store, because your code base on that assignment, let's say assignment 3 is a good example, is this big, right? So for me to get you to write all this code in 2 weeks is insane. So that's where I say it's okay. There might be some sections where I allow you to do it. Or I give you some, you can download and install some assets that are pre-made. An example of that would be your first-person controller. I'm not going to make you do a first-person controller from scratch for assignment 3, okay? But in this one, you got to do it on your own, okay? Just to clarify how it works. Okay, art and multimedia. So now you've done that. You have to share your files on GitHub. There is no live version for this one, because there is no, you can't share your stuff, you can't deploy on the web. I'm not going to ask you to do that. You can, but I don't want you to do that, all right? But there's a way of deploying stuff and choosing your deployment targets. You can choose WebGL as an example with Unity, right? But there's additional complexity, and I think this assignment is complex enough, right? So there's not going to be a live requirement for this one. Here's some optional game features. So you made your game, and I want to add some other stuff. Please only do these when you're done 100% of the other ones. Otherwise, it'll mess you up. Example, empower the computer-controlled enemies to fire bullets. Don't do that at the beginning. Plan for it. I like your plan. If you're planning to make them fire bullets, plan for it. Leave the, in your mind, you should plan to make that happen. But don't enable it until you're done everything else. That's what I recommend. Do your bonuses after, right? Include a final boss monster to avoid. So you play your first level, and then at the end of the first level, there's a boss monster that'll eat you. It's a lot. Believe me, it's hard to do that. Add power-ups for the player's avatar. Example would be, when I say power-ups, I mean like extra speed or shield, some kind of weird other things that you can get. Some people added cheat codes, all kinds of other stuff. Add a cool soundtrack to the game. That's an easy one to do, right? So maybe you should plan. Maybe you should all plan for this. An easy mark to kind of get right as a bonus, a soundtrack. Please don't use one that's like from some kind of rock and roll band, right? If you're going to get a soundtrack, there's some really cool free sound out there that you can use. And again, you want to kind of credit the people that are getting it, right? Allow the game to scroll in any direction in response to the player's control. So instead of scrolling only in one direction, you can scroll in all directions. That's really hard to do properly. So be careful about that one. Okay, so you have your external document. That's what you're going to hand in, and you're going to also hand in your external zip or your zip archive. Again, this thing is worth 10%, 20% deducted for each additional day. It's due on the Friday. It closes on the Monday, which means after Monday I won't be accepting it. Monday at midnight, right, of the day off. So that would be if it's due on the 5th, right, 6th, 7th, 8th at midnight. It's done. You can't hand it in after that, right? So please don't wait. And it's exactly the same timing as 2 other assignments I'm going to hand out because you can adjust. No, I have no classes that are, except for one that's on the Friday, right? Some things that people do is they skip class to do their assignments. That's really bad because I'm going to be talking about your assignments in class, right? So I'm talking about here's some stuff you can do to make this assignment better, even in the last days. And I would recommend you you come to class to figure that out, or watch the videos at the worst case. Questions around this assignment in general, what I want to complete. And I'm going to show you some examples right now, right? Okay, big one. It's worth 10%. All of the assignments in this course are going to be the exact same format. They're going to look like this. You'll have an external document, every one of them. So once you make your first external document, it's almost like, hey, I can use this as a template, right? I got to kind of, if you avoid doing the external document because there's a lot of pain involved, because developers, unfortunately, hate external documentation, right? And they hate internal documentation. They don't want to comment anything. They don't want to put an external document together. They just want to do their code and hand it in, right? That's not how we do it in game, right? Ever. We have to have some kind of external document. Think about this external document almost as a proposal, right? You're going to do a game jam with somebody. You do a proposal, and then you might win or lose, right? You might get this thing done. Think about this maybe a game that you might publish on the App Store one day, right? One thing I didn't mention here is I didn't tell you the resolution. I didn't say, hey, make this game 640 by 480. And I'm going to show you 640 by 480 because that's just the example I'm going to make. But what if you wanted to make this game that's compatible for iOS or Android devices? What would you do? What would be your resolution? Anybody know? You could. You could also make it 320 by 480. That's kind of a safe resolution to make it for, and then it would just stretch, right? 320 by 480 means your screen would be half the size of the one I'm going to show you, right? But that means everything would be aligned there. All your assets would be made for that size screen, right? So 320 by 480 is pretty safe. And you can make it as large as you want. You can make it 1024 by 768 or whatever resolution aspect you want. Okay, so that's one thing I didn't mention. You can do that too, and there's ways inside. We'll talk about how to make it so that it'll work on most devices, right? The problem with that is you don't know what the effect is going to be, right? So there's some adjustments to make. If you're making a game for iOS or Android, there's some certain things you need to do to prepare for that. For now, I recommend don't worry about that. Pick a resolution that it's going to work for you, and then you can learn to do it in the next game. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. So I'm going to close this up because I want you guys to see the kind of stuff that other people have come up with over the last semester. So I have some submissions to show you. And they're actually quite cool. Like, I'll be honest with you, some of them are for Space Shooter. They're pretty awesome, the Space Shooter samples, right? So let's take a look at that. I'm going to open it up with Unity. So I'm going to bring up Unity here. And now, of course, when I sign out, I have to log back in. And now, one thing I also want to mention is I don't want you to think that just because I'm showing you these, that you have to do this. I'm showing you the best of what I've seen, right, from last semester, or ones that are fairly good. All right, we're not talking about games that are. I don't expect this from everybody. Remember, there's no animation requirement, none for these games. Okay, so there's a few of them. So let's do. We'll start off with one of them here. Selena, last year's student, she kind of came up with one. So we'll look at one of them for hers, right? Now, she downloaded some assets from the asset store last semester, and that's one of the things she kind of decided to do. She says, look, Tom, is it okay if I download some assets from the asset store? Absolutely it is, and we're going to look at her scenes. So the way you start a game when you download it is, I got to go into scenes, and I got to start in this particular case. So here it is, and here's the game. Let's take a look and see what it looks like if it starts off. Okay, let me just stop this for a second and make it so we'll maximize on play. There's a maximize on play button here under the game part. If you click maximize on play, it'll take the whole screen. So it's much nicer than just doing it the other way. There we go. So that's 640 by 480. Okay, yeah, make it a little louder for you guys. You can fire bullets. You have some effects in terms of collisions, right? And the game is over, right? You've got your time, you've got your lives, you've got R to restart the game, and you've got your score as 130, right? So again, if we play, right? And notice the scrolling background, it's repeating, right? We'll talk about how to do that, I got one. And there's some other waves coming through. They just keep it doing over and over again. That's all it is. And look, they even fire bullets at you. And if I die, one thing to notice is she's got a soundtrack for both the front, in-game, different soundtrack, and when you finish, right? This is all one scene, if you notice, right? So it goes from start scene to this scene. So there's actually two scenes that she's reading. Okay. Very simple. That's hers. Let's look at some other ones. All right, so that's that one. Any comments or what do you think about that one? Do you think that's easy to do? Like, it's actually easy to do. What you did. Yeah. Yeah, it's not so difficult. This one is Seth kind of came up with this one. If you guys know Seth, then you know what he did, right? So here's one that he came up with. Again. The reason why I like Seth's is his is very complex. Like Seth is one of these guys, if you know him from a game perspective, he puts like everything into this game, right? Let's make sure it's maximized on play. This is his game. So you got your ship, right? And you got this thing, right? Oops, if I can stay on the same screen, how about that, Tom? And then I can also fire it with my mouse. Right? Looks pretty simple. The background scrolls, but it's not that crazy, right? Now, notice how everything is good. I got 20 points, and then now there's another wave, right? Now there's more different kinds of asteroids, right? Some of these assets aren't his own, right? He just reused them. Let me get my now. He's also replaced his mouse cursor, right? So again, there's no background, there's no animation, but he's pretty good, right? So the stuff, and he's got like multiple levels. We're talking about if he kept playing this game, there'd be other guys coming down. It's madness, right? So again, pretty good. One thing that he lost points on with this one is he made a top scroller, right? I'm asking for a side scroller, right? I'm asking for it to scroll in one direction actually, right? So you can scroll wherever you like, but when we talked about this, I said top scrollers, I want to show you a top scroller, I want you to make some other kind. So side scroller would be what I'm asking you to make. Okay. Let's open up another one. And we'll do a couple more and then we'll go on to some examples of stuff. Is that a question or are you just stretching? Here's Jay's. So Jay Clipperton, he's another one of my my students, right? He's actually really cool. He's actually more of a sound guy. That's his thing, right? He's pretty cool. He's a bit of an artist, right? So now this one, it wasn't complete, right? So I'm going to pull this one down. So there's some stuff that he lost, points he lost here. I'm going to make this so you can see more of it. That's all. That's why I'm doing this. So there's some points he lost for a couple of things he was missing, right? There's some really cool things about this too, and it's a different kind of game. Again, I'm not showing you always the perfect game, stuff that I liked. A cube, right? Notice he's just moving aside. You see the scoring happening, right? There's no firing, but the soundtrack is his own. He made his own soundtrack. He wrote it, right? Okay. and some pretty good explosions, right? So there's some really good things about the game, and there's some things I don't like about it, right? He also made a game that was top-down, so he lost points for that too. Now, actually, it's quite interesting to play this game. If you were to actually play it, I played it in the beginning, and then I tried it again, and I tried it over and over again to see how far I can go. One thing that that would make this game super better is if there was an actual score, right? Because I don't know how long I'm lasting or whatever. So kind of a really cool option here as well. One more, and then we're done for this one. Remember, I have examples here for open project. I have examples here for projects that are pretty good, and there's projects that are awesome, right? So let's get one that's a little bit different. Here's the last one we did. Remember, so see what I'm doing. I'm going into the project. Every time I go into the project, I go into the actual project assets folder. If I don't go to the assets folder, I won't be able to see the project, right? Oh yeah, this one. Let me do the same thing with this one so I can see more of the space with this game here. Neat little game that they came up with. Let's take a look. Yeah. Let's try that again. So I can move around. They're coming really slowly. So again, some really cool things about this game, and there's some really bad things about this game. What would you say is the bad thing about this game? There's a second wave, right? If I crash, right, you get the animation, right? And notice how I'm able to, with the Z key, I can use, almost everything I want. Notice how the high score, can you see the high score on the bottom right? It's a problem to see, isn't it? Because the contrast is really really low, and it's hard for you to see what it looks like, right? So there's some really good things about the games, and there's some bad things about the games, right? And I wanted to kind of give you the, kind of middle scale. I don't want to give you the best always, but notice that the background scrolls, and it's a continuous background. The idea is that he's kind of scrolling over a city, right? That's the kind of stuff, and they're all different. Every single game that you saw is a different game, right? Make it your own, right? That's what I recommend. Online. And I want you to try this now. So go up on Unity right now, so you can see the final version, and see if you can download this. Right? Grab on my GitHub. Go to github.com and /Centennial College. Right? And if you go to, if you look at COMP305 from last semester, let's go down. I'll tell you what it says in a second. It's way back here. And oh yeah, I want you. I mean, if you want to, it's pretty big, but on the second page here, if you look at Space Shooter, that's the actual game that was made from Unity. So again, I'm going to show you how to download one of our projects here and open it. So what you would do is, if there's a project online, this is the actual Space Shooter game that I remade, right? So I click on Download Zip, and I can put it on my desktop somewhere. So let's put it on my desktop. And it's going to be, notice how it says Space Shooter Master, right? So here it is. I'm downloading it. It's 25 megabytes, so it shouldn't take that long. There it is. It's done. And I'm going to open up my folder here on the desktop. Here's my folder on the desktop, Space Shooter, right? And it says Space Shooter Master, so you should have something like this too, right? And this is part of the learnings. One thing is, if I double click on it, I get right into it, right? I'm ready to go, right? I see my assets and everything else. This is good. Sometimes what happens on GitHub is they'll give you layers of Space Shooter Master. If you see Space Shooter Master, inside of that there's Space Shooter Master, inside of that Space Shooter Master, you got to go dig deep into there, because it depends on how you've downloaded your project. Okay, now that I've got this, I can go to my Unity, and I can go to File, Open Project, and I'm loading another project, right? And I'm going to go to Open, this one, right? And I'm going to hit the desktop. So I'm going to go to Desktop, and I'm going to go to Find That Project, right? Which is, again, Space Shooter is what it's called. Notice how if I go here, I'm good. right? I don't want to go in here into my assets. I want to go where I see my assets as in the root, like this. And then I want to press open. If you've got Unity 5X, it should work for you. If you've got some other version of Unity, version 4X, won't work. Okay? This is not made for Unity 4, it's made for Unity 5. So notice that the asset takes a little bit longer for me to download, and I'll do the same thing I did with, on this screen here. I'll kind of populate the project screen a little bit lower so you can see more of it. Okay? So from the get-go, there's nothing loaded. Notice, there's nothing loaded here. And this is the tutorial I want you to do. I want you to learn how to do this on your own. But just following the example and mimicking what you see, right? Mimicry is a great way to learn, right? It's a great way to start off. So if I look at scenes, I double-click on scenes here, in the inspector. If I look at it, if I open it up, there's main. I want to open up the main scene. And this is what you get. This is the background, all right, for the main scene. Right? So you have to go to scenes, main, and double-click it or else it won't run. I'm going to click on, in the game, I'm going to click on maximize on play. So that'll maximize my game real estate, right? And then when I press play, I can play the game. And this is what it looks like. All right, so this is the game that you're going to make online, right? This is the completed version, ladies and gentlemen. And notice that it does scroll, but it scrolls very slowly in the background. And that's okay. Yeah. Okay. It's kind of cool. There's a couple of things to note here. One of them is this completed version has enemies that fire at you, right? I've kind of added everything in. And the other thing to note is that not only does the scrolling happen in the background, there's a bit of a background soundtrack. Let's take a look at this one more time, right? And there's also, what you notice is there's a particle effect. There's a particle effect here when you have an explosion. Now you don't have to have particle effects for explosions, but you could have some kind of explosion effect, right? So that's what you're going to be building, right? That's what you're going to be building with the tutorial. I don't want to see this from you handed in. Somebody just handed me this in. Say, hey, I built the tutorial, Tom. That's my assignment, right? No. That's 0, right? So I don't want this back. I don't want any form of this back. I don't want any assets from this back, right? I want your assets. So where do I get assets? And I'm talking everything. I don't want this sound. I don't want the explosion from this one. I don't want the graphics from this one or anything else I give you. Find your own, all right? No. I don't want you to update this. I want you to use the tutorial to build this, but your assignment isn't this. That was just for learning, right? Your assignment is make your own. Your assignment is make your own project and your own idea. Now, there's a lot of different ideas, a lot of side-scrolling shooters, right? Or scrolling shooters. If I was going to look up scrolling shooter, right? So I say like scrolling shooter game, right? Not game maker. Like a scrolling shooter game, right? If I was to look at that and get some ideas, there's a lot of ideas out there that do kind of similar things, right? So if I look at some idea for scrolling shooter games, they give you some ideas here for scrolling shooter games, right? So take a look. If you've never seen a scrolling shooter game before, there's lots of examples online where you can download a video. I can't show a video within my video, right? Because I'm actually recording on YouTube, but you can certainly go online and check it out, okay? Scrolling shooter. So make it your own. And now what about if you want to use graphics for some other game that existed before, like Mario, or you want to use, you want to remake Space Invaders with a scrolling kind of Space Invaders. Okay. I mean, if you want to use someone else's assets like graphics, you can do it. Just don't give me back Space Shooter and don't give me back Mail Pilot, the one I'm going to show you how to make. As long as you don't give me those two back, sky's the limit. Make it your own, right? Even if you download game assets from the asset store, which we're going to talk about how to do later on. You can totally do that, right? Also, I mean, Jay's example was a square that was just running around, right? I mean, it's kind of it's his theme to make it more that way, right? But really what you want to do is something that looks like a player, like it's just squares. It's not going to be as exciting as, for example, if it was an actual ship or some kind of vehicle or something, right? That's more of an exciting kind of game, right? How about that wireframe? Wireframe. I asked you guys to do sketches, right? How do I do sketches? Well, there's a really cool site that I recommend you go to, and this is I use this for not just for wireframing for games, but I also use it for websites. So if you're a web developer, this is a great little site. It's free to try. So if I click on Try Now, so mockups, moqups.com. Try it. Notice how I have all these things here. I can actually go here online and erase them all. So I can just kind of just delete them. Like this is a little online example, right? And I can also change the size of my screen right up here to match it to whatever I want, like whatever I want to do. And I can pull down some of these things. So if I want to have a click on this and make a rectangle, I can draw online by pulling it in, right? And I can say, okay, well this is my ship. Let's say my ship is this size. It starts over here, and as an example, here's my enemy, as an example, and I can pull in a size for my enemy. This is my enemy, and then you can start labeling, right? You can start talking about here's a label, and what you want to do is you can use some lines here. Here's the line, and what is this thing about? Well, this is my enemy. Here we go, and you can talk about that enemy, right? And as you keep going, you can label what it's going to do, and you can use this document to kind of describe your plan about how you're going to make your game. It's all online. The only thing that you can't do is print it. So what do? Screenshot, right? So nice and easy, and you can kind of have a little document to do it. It's a one thing. If you want to make an iPhone or some kind of phone application, there's also some other templates here. As you know, there's menus and stuff. We're not doing that, so that doesn't really apply to us. So let's just get rid of some of this stuff. But they have other things in here too, pie charts and different kinds of. You can actually use a browser window to show what the game will look like in a browser if you're going to make some kind of web game. Hint, hint for those people who are going to make web games for me, right? Those kind of things that this thing will let you do. Even some extra shapes. So if I pull in a shape, I can choose different shapes like circles, or whatever. And so you can decide, my enemy is not a square, it's a circle, and this is the thing. What it looks like. And you can actually drag and drop in here or create shapes of your own by just drawing them, right? So that's one way, and that's one app that does that, mockups, right? You can certainly use other apps, and one of my favorites that I'm going to be using for this course is Fireworks, Adobe Fireworks actually. More of a professional level kind of program. Discontinued in Adobe CC version. They only stopped at CS6, right? So Adobe Fireworks is a very cool graphics program that I use to do stuff. And again, you can do the same kind of thing. So I'm going to say File New as an example. And let's say I want to make it the exact same size, so 640 by 480. You can kind of describe that with a transparent background and press OK. And then there's your transparent background. And then you can add assets in there the same way. You can just draw them out. You can use Photoshop, whatever you want to use to do that if you really want to. Guys, I don't need complexity here. I need a plan, all right? The simpler it is, the better. Here's my assets. Here's what it's going to look like. And now, after your plan, you made your game, show me what it looks like now. Planned, actual. How did it go? What's your journey? How did you get there? This is my plan, and then this is what I end up doing. No plan, it's going to wreck you. You're going to spend a lot of time, in going down a black hole. You don't know what, you can write stuff forever with gaming, because maybe gaming is the most complex thing you can possibly do. More complex than any application will write for any employer out there. Truly, there's so much complexity to it to make it work right. All right, so Fireworks, a professional level program. I got to show you that one. There's also GIMP. If you're a GIMP user, it's a free open source program you can also use too. I'm going to go to that website. I have it, but I prefer to use Fireworks. So GIMP, leave the page, right? So GIMP is an open source graphic image manipulation program. That's what it is. Actually, it partners very nicely. It plays very nicely with Blender, right? So GIMP and Blender nicely. And there's a lot of really cool features. I'm not going to go over the functionality of GIMP, but there's tons of tutorials out there from the community, stuff that if you wanted to learn how to use GIMP as a graphics manipulation program. Further than that, if you don't want to do this, and if I want to find things like Sprite Sheets, where I want to get my sprites, because we're going to use flat images in our 2D games, right? And that's Sprite Sheets. So how do I get that? If I look at Sprite Sheet, if I can type any kind of Sprite Sheet on Google, It's going to give you some images of various sprite sheets that are being used today. Notice that they come with various states of animation. So this one here has got different states. He's got a jumping state or a falling state. He's got an idle state. He's got a running state. And we can use frame-based animation to do this by flipping frames. That's all we're doing here, flipping frames, one frame at a time. We're going to be talking about that type of animation, and we're also going to be talking about the animation tool that's built into Unity called Mechanim, right? It's built in, and what you can do is you can take these sprite sheets and you can use these images to create a sprite, an animation sequence. That's what it is. That just does the animation very, very simply, right? So we're going to hit that throughout the course. It may not be for this one, because for this one there is no platformer, there's no guy running around typically where you do that in assignment 2, okay? But you could certainly do that. You could certainly grab a sprite sheet or some kind of, for different kinds of things, for ships or for different kinds of characters here. And then, if you notice, there's quite a few of them online that you can certainly use for educational purposes. We're not going to resell your game here. And I'm not looking for you to make the be-all and end-all, all right? Other things to note is, and just from an asset acquiring perspective, you can get the asset store, so Unity asset store. So let's go there. So I'm going to show you that, asset store. Now, if I go to the Unity asset store, you have to have a Unity account in order for you to access this asset store. And I can certainly search for stuff, like for example, if I go 2D, 2D assets, or 2D pack is one to search for, right? There's a 2D pack that comes right from Unity Technologies, right? And if you notice, you can certainly download and install this Unity pack by opening it up in Unity. And if you were to do this, it'll import the pack, and it's just a bunch of images and assets that you can use to make your game. Okay? By the way, I had a lot of people do this last semester, and it was okay. I'm okay with that because I don't expect you guys to be artists. I expect you guys to fulfill the requirements of the document that I've given you. So here's my document, do this game, right? That's the requirement, right? So, so it's not about making your own assets. It's nice to make your own, and you can certainly modify the assets that you get from the asset store if you want to, right? But I'm not limiting you not to use this. Questions around assets, gathering, and tools. One more, and I highly recommend this one for 2D gaming, and also for the people that are taking my web, the COMP397 course. And I kind of mentioned it before. One more time I'll mention it so you guys have this in mind because it's a really cool tool. Texture Packer. Texture Packer is definitely one that I recommend. We don't have an official book for this course, but Texture Packer is a really cool tool that you should download, especially when it comes to 2D. In this section, Assignment 1 and Assignment 2 is all around 2D, right? It allows you to drag and drop different sprites and create a sprite sheet to use for things like animations, and as one single asset to save memory. A really, really cool program. You can try it, I believe. There's a trial period that has limited functionality, and you can also download it and install it and pay for it for about $50, right? So if you go to store, and if I was going to see what it costs in terms of for Texture Packer, and sometimes they have packs where you can download, like $54.99 Canadian, and you're good to go. I think it's American actually. Now, American pricing is crazy, right? And they also have packs if you want to get the other ones. Don't need the other ones, right? I highly recommend this one to get this. And it's cross-platform. I think it works for Mac and, Mac and Windows anyway. I don't think there's one for Linux. So I've shown you a couple of tools to complete your project or your assignment number 1. Remember, it's worth 10% of your final mark, and it's due 2 weeks from now on Friday, the 5th of February the 5th. At midnight. All right, that's the official day. Questions around stuff I've talked about that you need to do. Any concerns? Right? Some people, when they look at this, are like, oh my God, I don't know how to start. Where do I start with this thing? Start with your plan. Start drawing out what you want to do. That's my answer to you. Start by doing the sketch. Get your external document started. It's worth 8 marks, even if nothing works. Right? Get your external document. Remember I talked about easy pickings, like, low-hanging fruit? That's the low-hanging fruit. Start thinking about what your document's going to look like. Get her done. That's worth like some marks right there, right? Your logo. It's going to take a second for you to put your logo together, right? So all that, spend an hour to do that. And once you've done that, now you've got a template for the next pieces, for the next assignment and the next assignment. Okay, so that's what I would start off first. And the other one is looking at some classic arcade games that existed in the past. If you're someone who likes to, you're not a gamer, right? But you took this course because you want to understand game elements and so on, but you've never played a game before in your life. You're not a game person. That's okay. There are people like that. I'm a gamer, so I play games all the time. I play games with my kids. I teach them the games. I play desktop games. I play Warhammer. I play whatever, right? I play card games. Like there's games. That's what I do, right? But maybe for you, it's not that way. So look at classic. I would look up classic arcade games. And if you've taken one course that really is cool to take here, if you're a game student, and I think it's required, is COMP301, which is like Intro to Game and Simulation. And in that course, we kind of talk about some basic games that you can, that kind of made up, what gaming is today. They're kind of the history of gaming. So you can look at some examples here, like for example, Pac-Man, right? Here's my Pac-Man. And they actually have a Flash game that you can play right online to check it out, right? A Pac-Man game or whatever. Pac-Man is not the game that we're going to be making today, right? We're not making a game that's in a maze, right? That's not the you're making a scroller game, right? So you can certainly try these out to see if there's something like this that you want to make if you don't have any ideas, okay? The other thing to do if you want to simulate games on your machine, and if this is cross-platform, you can try something like MAME, right? MAME is an emulator that actually emulates the old arcade games out there, right? So if you can download the ROMs, right, and you can install them physically on your machine, and it'll be the exact game from the old arcade games, the exact game, because they only used to be like 64K, right, back then. That's the whole game. And now we have like gigs of memory, so you can totally simulate or emulate these games on your system. And notice that it is cross-platform on Linux, Mac, and Windows systems, right? So you can download, and then you can find ROMs for these games. So if I wanted to look for, this is one piece, and if I click on downloads, you can see that's the latest release. There's a ROMs download, and notice that there's a ton of games from like the 1970s, right, and the 1980s that you can try and download and run on your machine, right, to try and understand what they actually do, right? Everything from Sidetrack, Top Gun, Super Tank, there's tons of games. And if you want to look at other ROMs, you can certainly go and find them too. You can say like MAME, ROMs, and then there's a bunch of ROMs that you can find for every game you can possibly think of, and games that you don't even know exist. All right, to give you ideas of what to do, right? One more, and then we'll break, okay? I swear. We'll get a vitamin break, a call your sister break, take a little bit of fresh air break, that kind of thing. There is a place, I use this a lot, and I mentioned this again in my games, where you can, there's some stuff you can download. If I go to HTML5 games, there's actually a place that I have called Reiner's Tile Sets. Reiner's Tile Sets, this guy Reiner, he's a graphic artist. He has a bunch of 2D graphics that you can download here on Reiner's Tile Sets. It's a guy in Germany, right? He also does Blender tutorials and Blender stuff as well, if you look him up, right? So if I click on 2D graphics, and let's say I want to look at 2D buildings, right? You can see that you can download now 2D buildings. But these 2D buildings are all in kind of an orthographic / perspective mode. They're almost like at an angle, right? But he has other ones too, like for example, animals, right? So you can have some kind of frame-based animation with an animal or a creature or whatever. And there's tons of them. Like if you want to make an RPG, Reiner's Tile Sets. It's like simple as downloading and installing it. So lots of places you can go for your assets, and as long as you give the people credit, I'm good to go. Like you don't have to. Don't try and steal the stuff. It's not necessary. These people worked a lot, pretty hard on making this stuff. It makes sense. One thing that I'm always going to look for when I mark your assignment number 1 and 2 and 3 and so on is consistency, right? So have a theme. What is your game about, right? Like give it a goal. Like there's a reason why your player is on the game. He's defending against aliens, as an example, or he's attacking a castle. Something he's going to do in the game. Whatever. Name something that's going to be, and keep it consistent. So if you're playing a medieval kind of role-playing-esque type game, don't give me like random guitar music. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like the music, the graphics, the background, they all gonna match. They all gonna make sense, right? So if you some people record their voices, right? And there's something from another asset you can download is Audacity. There's an asset you can make for sounds. I'll give you one more, and then we'll stop, I swear. Right? So in Audacity, right, you can kind of record your voice. So if I click on the record button, right, and then stop, right, I can go back and play that again, right, right, and then stop, and then I can cut it out. I can take pieces that, like, this is part of it, right? So I kind of take, I kind of separate this piece here, you know, as an example. I want this piece, and that's the dying piece, and I want to kind of cut that out, and that's the piece I want to listen to, as an example, and then that'll be it. Look, watch, right, and every time, right, and then I can modulate that thing. You can actually go to Effect and do all kinds of change the pitch, right? So I can change that so it's from a G, you know, it goes down to a much lower pitch. I can make it so that it goes down a bunch of steps, right, and then preview it. It didn't really work, but I mean, you know, change the pitch a little downward in other ways, right, until it sounds like totally different. It doesn't sound like you anymore. So, I mean, there's stuff you can do. Audacity, great little tool to learn and play with for making unique sounds that are yours. No one owns them. And one other tool you can download for free is CFXR. CFXR is a tool that creates other sound effects, like, for example, the pickup sound, or laser shot, or explosion. And every time you click on the same thing, it gives you another sound. And you can decide which one to take. It's random, right? There's also a web-based version for this. So BFXR is what it's called, if you want to try this out yourself. So if I go bfxr.net, you can download, or you can actually go on the site, and I believe it's a Flash-based website. And again, it'll be the same thing. Laser shot, right? And power up, and a hit or hurt, and a jump, right? Right? So all kinds of little funny sounds like that that might make sense for your game, and you don't have to buy anything, or you don't have to do anything. It's kind of funny, right? So all these tools and more are required for making a game up, right? So and there's lots of opportunity for you not to cheat and not to steal stuff from other people. That you can make something that's really cool, your own, and fun, right? So and that's it. Any other questions before we take a break for 5 or 10 minutes? I know you guys are all tired to see, and it's like the end of the day. It's like 6:30 now. It's almost like, what, 7:30 now, 7:40. You guys are all dead, right? You don't want to get out of here, and you don't want to hear my voice anymore. So go, take 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and come back, and we'll continue.